So the moment that you all been waiting for all of spoiler season is finally here. That's right, it's time for the Golden Pig Awards of Warhammer 40K. Well, okay, the Warhammer 40K Commander Precon products, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean. Throughout spoiler season, commanders are competing for this extremely prestigious award. And of course, the winner of this award will receive nothing less than the Golden Pig Award itself, which of course is made out of definitely gold. Definitely not, some just, thing I found on Amazon and bought a while back. Nevertheless, the winner of this prestigious award will cherish it forever and, of course, display it proudly. Now, a couple of quick disclaimers before we jump into things. The Golden Pig Awards are, of course, 100% subjective. I mean, it's basically me just picking, my favorite commanders from the product, and your picks might differ, and that's okay. Also, again, these are based on what commanders are my favorite for, one reason or another, and I'll try my best to explain why. But also, that does not mean that these are the most powerful commanders from the set. That's going to be a completely separate episode, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel for that one as well. But now with all that said, let's jump into the awards. So starting off at number 10, we've got Magnus the Red. Magnus the Red is a 4/5 demon Primarch with flying that costs 3 blue and a red, and it has unearthly power. Instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less cast for each creature token you control, and Blade of Magnus. Whenever Magnus the Red deals combination to a player, create a 3/3 red spawn creature token. Now, this commander is really interesting. It's a really interesting take on, basically that is it, storm reduction kind of a commander. We have definitely seen this kind of an archetype for this type of commander before, but not one quite like this. Because again, that reduction is dependent on the number of creature tokens in play, which is a very specific thing. Now, of course, Magnus the Red itself can make you creature tokens over time, just by hitting players. But that's going to take quite a while to do, and yeah, there are a lot quicker ways to make a lot more tokens and to, really take over the game quite quickly with a commander like this. This is one of those commanders that I find to be very interesting, but it is incredibly powerful to the point where it might be annoying in certain builds, so that's why it's actually kind of lower on this list, though I do really find it interesting. I personally probably am not going to actually build this one because, well, it's one of those commanders that can definitely take over, well, quite a long time for a turn. And there are certain playgroups that are completely fine with that, but yeah, if you're taking 20 minutes a turn, you should probably make sure that your playgroup's okay with that ahead of time. Because, yeah, there are some disgusting things that you can do with this commander. I mean, plain disgusting things. First off, you've got access to a lot of fantastic token generators. I mean, like Young Pyromancer. Whenever you cast Instant or Sorcery spell, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. So essentially, every single time you cast Instant or Sorcery spell, you get an extra creature token into play just for free, and again, that is going to keep reducing the cost of your future instant sorcery spells. So you can cast more and more of them to make even more tokens, and you see where this is going. And speaking of where it's going, I mean, Goblin Offensive. Cards like this that can just make a ton of creature tokens at once are incredible with this commander. Put X 1/1 red Goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple card that essentially can just cost, red, because that, that reduction essentially your commander can give you, and you can put a ton of tokens into play with this, which then reduces the cost of your next giant X spell. I mean, even an X spell like Firecat Blitz can be helpful in this stack. X red, put X 1/1 red cat creature tokens with haste into play, exile them at the end of the turn. But yeah, basically, you get these temporarily, but it can still just be, basically a giant fireball on the field. Hasty 1/1s you can just swing out at your opponents. And of course, on that turn, you can get a massive cost reduction for your other spells too. Moving on, I mean, speaking of creature tokens, we can even make a creature token version of our commander to make things even more ridiculous with Irenicus's Vile Duplication. It says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary if the creature is legendary. So basically, yeah, get a second copy and make things even more ridiculous, reducing the cost of all your spells even further. Which, of course, can help with other X spells as well, even ones that, don't make you creature tokens, but can help you get to even more spells that can. I mean, Drown in Dreams is a great card with this commander. Choose one. If you control a commander who casts a spell, you may choose both. Target player draws X cards. Target player mills twice X cards. So this can kind of be a win con as well, taking out one player, maybe even taking out two at a certain point. I mean, with the amount of, creature tokens you can make with a deck like this, you could easily draw out two players with this spell once you're set up properly. And of course, yeah, there's a lot of brutal things that you can do with this commander. I mean, Storm is definitely a direction that you can take this commander. Again, a 20-minute turn or so is not out of the question. Empty the Warrens, create two 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and it's got Storm. So when you cast this spell, you copy for each spell cast before this turn. You have access to, a lot of great ritual effects as well with these colors. So yeah, you can do some really, really broken and powerful things. I mean, extra turns is another build that you can do with this commander. So this commander, again, definitely a very interesting one, but one, again, that is pretty brutal, and one that can, well, not be the friendliest to certain play groups. So I did kind of, lower it a little bit in my own personal rankings, too. But now it's time for us to move on to number 9 with Old One Eye, a 6/6 Tyrannid with Trample that costs 5 and a green. It has other creatures you control have Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, create a 5/5 green Tyrannid creature token. And on top of that, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may discard 2 cards. If you do, return Old One Eye from your graveyard to your hand. So this commander is actually pretty straightforward, but pretty interesting as well. I mean, 6 mana, you essentially get 11 total power across 2 bodies, and that's trampling as well. And of course, since this commander gives your other creatures trample, you can take advantage of a lot of hyper-efficient green creatures that, well, maybe need some help getting some of their hyper-efficient damage through. On top of that, this is the kind of a commander that you can get around commander tax if you really want to, and also, again, with that discarding ability, you essentially can get certain cards in your graveyard that you actually didn't want to get there. So yeah, this commander I think has a good amount of potential. I mean, it is limited to just being a monocolor commander, but still, there are some pretty exciting things that you can do with it. Again, just taking advantage of all of green's, hyper-efficient green creatures like, Yorvo or Gigantosaurus can be a great thing to do with this commander. Yorvo is a 0/0 giant noble for just 3 mana, green, but again, pips, when you're in a monocolor deck like this one, really don't matter at all. Enters the battlefield with 4 counters on it. Whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a counter on Yorvo. Then if that creature's power is greater than Yorvo's power, put another counter on Yorvo. So this can grow incredibly quickly in a deck like this. It's already hyper efficient to start, and yeah, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But again, Yorvo doesn't have trample itself, but your commander gives it trample to help get that damage through. I mean, speaking of hyper efficient though, Gigantosaurus, a 10/10 for 5 mana, because again, that's all green pips, but those don't really matter to us. Again, this is just a vanilla creature, but with our commander, we give it trample to ensure that we can get that damage through, and a 10/10 with trample is a lot more effective than one that doesn't. I mean, without trample, it's just going to get chump blocked again and again and again, and now you can't chump block something like this. But a creature that already has trample that can also be great in this deck is Ghalta Primal Hunger, a 12/12 Elder Dinosaur for 10 green, but it's going to cost X less to cast for X the total power creatures we control, and it's got trample. So Ghalta, again, would cost 12, but with this commander, I mean, there is basically no chance of this costing essentially any more than really 2. Because we just play our commander and we get a 5/5 with it. Again, 11 total power, that cost reduction, it already hits that just with the commander and the token that it makes, not even counting all the other efficient creatures we're going to have. So yeah, we can get some really heavy hitters out very quickly with this kind of a deck. And speaking of heavy hitters, well, those tokens that our commander makes, again, are 5/5s, and a card like Voyager Staff can really help us out with that. By paying 2, we can sacrifice it, exile target creature, return the exile card to the battlefield, under control at the beginning of the next end step. So this can be a great way to protect our commander, and basically a way for us to blanket to take advantage of that ETB and get another 5/5. And speaking of getting more and more of those tokens, well, Selesnyologist is a great populate effect. Pay 2 and a green, exile target creature card from a graveyard, then populate, which of course means create a token that's a copy of a creature token you control. So if we can get a repeatable populate effect like this one out there, we can make a lot of copies of that token, and again, just basically paying 3 mana and getting rid of something from someone's graveyard for a 5/5 is going to be great. And speaking of great, again, because our commander does give trample, we can take advantage of massive pump spells like Vitalizing Wind. It's an instant that says creatures you control get +7/+7 until end of turn. So this can pump our creatures a ton, I mean to game-ending levels. And again, if our opponents were blocking our creatures, well, this wouldn't get a lot of damage through. But again, with our commander giving out trample is huge and helps us get a ton of damage through, especially with spells like these. So yeah, Old One Eye might be limited to mono green, but there's some really exciting things that you can do with it still. And yeah, if you've always wanted to take advantage of some hyper-efficient green creatures, this is the chance. But now it's time for us to move on to number 8 with Martarian Demon Primarch. Martarian is a 5/6 Demon Primarch with flying that costs 5 and a black, and it has Primarch of the Death Guard. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, create X 2/2 Black Astartes Warrior creature tokens with Menace. X can't be greater than the amount of life you lost this turn. So this commander can be very mana hungry, but by actually, investing a lot into ramping, you can really take advantage of that end step trigger. And of course, even just being limited to a mono black deck, you've got plenty of ways to lose a lot of life very effectively, very efficiently, and essentially in the exact quantity that you want to. So you can make a massive army quickly, and with that army, of course, you can take advantage of those creatures, either swinging or hitting, or yes, even dying, to get a lot of benefits in many ways, actually, to actually make up for the life that you already lost. So yeah, this commander can definitely be one of those high risk, high reward commanders where you can put yourself into the red zone just, to actually get an advantage on your opponents, and you can hope that it works out for you and do some really exciting plays with it. I mean, this is the type of commander that can utilize some of my favorite cards in Magic. I'm talking about cards like Mischievous Poltergeist, which essentially I like to call life-setting cards. Mischievous Poltergeist is a 1/1 flyer that has pay 1 life regenerated. So, of course, this can be a creature that can just stick out and play for quite a long time. It can be really hard to actually take out because you can just regenerate whenever you want, essentially for free. Yes, again, for life, but yeah, you don't have to use mana for it or anything like that. And then, of course, on top of that, you can utilize this as many times as you want. Even when you don't need to regenerate it, you can actually just keep losing the amount of life that you want to set your life total to wherever you need it to be. So again, if you've got, 10 mana to dump into that X, maybe at the end of your turn, you're like, okay, I'll lose 10 life, and I will dump 10 mana, and now I've got, 20 power across 10 bodies, and they've got Menace. Good luck. Now, of course, we can also lose life for a reason with, something like Greed, pay a black, pay 2 life, draw a card. This can be a great way to generate some card advantage on top of, again, allowing us to lose life so that we can utilize our mana to make tokens. Even just a simple draw spell like Sign in Blood can be great for this deck as well. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Now, that could turn into pay an extra 2 mana on top of that at the end of the turn and make 2 2/2s with Menace. So again, cards you might already want to run in a deck, you actually can take even more advantage of with a commander like this. Speaking of taking advantage of it, make sure you consider cards that also deal with warriors as well, because yeah, you're making warriors. Raider Spoils is a great card for this deck, and enchantment says creatures you control get +1/+0, so that's a great pump effect, especially considering that your warriors are hard to block. And on top of that, whenever a warrior control deals counter to a player, you may pay 1 life. If you do, draw a card. So now when you get them through, they can generate you even more card advantage, help you lose even more life so you can make even more of them. But on the other end of things, they can actually help us gain life too with Zulaport Cutthroat or, those Blood Artist type effects. Whenever it and other creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this in combination with, a Sacrifice Outlet can be a great way to drain your opponents whenever you need to. You're going to be getting back the life that you lost, and you're going to be draining your opponents in the process to take them down. Or just, whenever a board wipe happens, that can just be a great way to, drain them for a ton. But you, of course, can kind of have your own one-sided board wipe in a way with Butcher of Malakir. Whenever it or another creature control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So, sacrifice your warriors here, there, and everywhere, take out your opponent's creatures, and it's going to be very difficult for them to keep anything in play once you're set up properly. So yeah, Martarian can take advantage of certain cards in an interesting way. Again, those life-setting cards, and I really tend to like commanders like that, especially the ones that have big, exciting effects. But now it's time for us to move on to number 7 with Imtek the Stormlord. It's a 3/3 Necron that costs 2 black, and it has Pharaon. Whenever 1 or more artifact cards leave your graveyard, create 2 2/2 black Necron warrior artifact creature tokens. And also, Grand Strategist, at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target artifact creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains Menace until end of turn. Now that second part is nice, but the part that I obviously like most about this commander is that first part. Every single time an artifact leaves your graveyard, or should I say, 1 or more, you get 2 2/2 creature tokens. That is a massive effect, and there are plenty of ways for you to set yourself up to be able to do that a lot throughout the game and to make a massive army in absolutely no time. And of course, if you really want to go in a more broken direction, yeah, there are definitely ways to break this and go infinite. And then, of course, the name the Stormlord can be quite fitting there. Regardless, I really like these kinds of commanders that can have interesting triggers and that you can really take advantage of with certain cards that you might not, utilize anywhere else, that might not see play anywhere else. Now, that being said, a card that does see play in other places, especially in artifact-heavy decks, Mirror Retriever can be an incredible card in this deck. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, it doesn't matter where your artifacts go when they leave your graveyard, and getting them back to your hand can just be a great way to generate even more value, and of course, again, an infinite amount of value if you're set up properly. I mean, Scrap Trawler is yet another way to generate a lot of value. It says whenever it or another artifact you control is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, return your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana value. So essentially, I mean, even just between Mirror Retriever and Scrap Trawler, if you can keep, sacrificing one to get the other back to your hand from your graveyard, you sacrifice the other one to get the other one back to your hand, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, you're going to just keep doing this as much as you want. Obviously, that is mana dependent, though again, there are ways to generate mana when you're doing this, like, a Ashnod's Altar. Yeah, you could go infinite once set up properly. Because again, every single time one of your artifacts leaves your graveyard, you get 2/2/2 artifact creature tokens, which of course you can sacrifice for value in other ways. Yeah, this commander can be broken with the right build regardless. Of course, you can also take advantage of other artifact synergies like, Foundry Inspector. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This can help make things even more ridiculous, again, in those kinds of builds, but you don't have to go in that direction if you don't want to. But yeah, even though you are just in mono black, of course, you've got access to some fantastic sacrifice outlets, especially some, free ones like Viserys here, sacrifice a creature, scry 1. This can provide you a ton of value throughout the game. I mean, again, keep in mind, every single time, you get that trigger from your commander, you are getting 2 more creatures that you can sacrifice with this for value. And speaking of that, you can also utilize that to take your opponents down with something like Marionette Master. Fabricate 3 so you can have it come to play with 3 counters on it. Whenever an artifact you control is put from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. Basically, every single time you've got an artifact hitting the graveyard, you are going to be draining someone for 4, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, just think again of our example of Mirror Retriever. We sacrificed that to get something else out of our graveyard back to our hand. We are going to, have that trigger once with Marionette Master, drain someone for 4, sacrifice those 2 tokens that we made as well, which again are artifact creature tokens, drain, someone else for 4, someone else for 4, or, just drain one person for 12 overall with all of this nonsense. And again, this is the type of deck that can utilize cards that you really don't see play elsewhere, like, a Scrabbling Claw is a fantastic card in this deck. Artifact for 1, tap, target player exiles a card from their graveyard. So essentially, once you're set up again, and once you've milled a bunch of artifacts in your graveyard or sacrificed them, etc., etc., you can just basically tap this and make 2/2/2s every single time. So yeah, I think this commander has a lot of potential. It can be built in some really exciting ways. Speaking of which, though, now let's move on to number 6 with Magus, Lucia, Kane, a 1/1 Humid Tyranid Wizard that costs 1 green, blue, red. Lucia Kane has Spiritual Leader. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1 counter on target creature in Psychic Stimulus, tap, add colorless. When you next cast a spell with X and its mana cost or activate an ability with X and its activation cost this turn, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy, and of course a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So that first part, well, is just a nice additional effect that of course can help us out in certain ways, but yeah, I mean, what makes this commander really interesting is the ability to essentially, tap for mana and utilize that mana to copy either an ability or copy a spell, no matter what that spell is, as long as it's got X and its mana cost. So this commander can do some really exciting and really powerful things. I mean, even just consider, a creature that has X and its cost, just getting a second copy of that creature can double up your value and be a very powerful thing, especially when, well, maybe that creature has an ETB or some kind of ability that you really want to utilize. Yeah, this commander has a lot of exciting potential. And of course, it can be taken in a lot of exciting directions. You could lean more heavily into those activations as well if that's what you really want to lean into. I mean, even just consider like Magus the Candelabra. X, tap, untap, X target lands. Yeah, you can double up on that, put a good amount of mana into it, and get a ton of mana in a single turn. And of course, obviously, and if you've got lands that can tap for more than just one, you can get a massive amount of mana very quickly thanks to this commander and Magus. And speaking of a massive amount of mana, well, yeah, Animus Awakening is a great X spell for this commander. Reveal the top X cards of your library, put all land cards among them on the battlefield, tap the rest of them on your library in a random order. And if you've got Spell Mastery, if there are 2 or more instant sorcery cards in your graveyard, you untap those lands. So getting a second copy of this can get a ton of cards off the top of your library, ton of lands into play. And again, basically have them untapped in a lot of scenarios, so you can basically not only ramp, but also kind of get more mana back than you even put into this. And for X spells that are kind of like those double X spells like Wildest Dreams, this just makes them, again, twice as efficient. Return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand, exile Wildest Dreams, Again, you basically just cut off one of those X's because you are doubling up on the spell. And like I mentioned before, yeah, doubling up on some creatures can be huge, like a Hooded Hydra. It's a 0/0 that enters the battlefield with X counters on it. When it dies, you get a 1/1 green snake creature token for each counter on it. So put a good amount of mana into this, get 2 copies of it. If those creatures ever die, you just get a massive snake army. And speaking of massive, well, how about Altered Ego, a shapeshifter that costs X2 green-blue. It can't be countered, and you can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with X additional counters on it. Basically, a clone that our commander turns into a double clone that can be even bigger than whatever creature it's copying. So we can have these clones either, copy separate creatures, or, just basically have, if one of our opponents has the best creature on the board, now we have 2 copies of that creature, and they're probably even bigger than that one. So yeah, there are plenty of massive spells that we can double up on, and yeah, of course we can also utilize some other cards that can really benefit us with X spells like Elementalist Palette. It says, whenever you cast a spell with X and its mana cost, put 2 charge counters on Elementalist Palette. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it for a colorless free charge counter on it. Spend this mana only on costs that contain X. So this can get a lot of counters on it very quickly in a deck like this, and yeah, this can make our X spells even more massive. Definitely an interesting take on a commander, and I'm excited to see all the different directions that players end up building this one. But now let's move on to number 5 with Bellacor the Dark Master, a 6/5 demon noble with flying that costs 3 blue, black, red. It has Prince of Chaos. When it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life for X the number of demons you control. And Lord of Torment, whenever their demon enters the battlefield under your control, deals damage equal to its power to any target. I have been waiting for a demon tribal commander, or should I say a dedicated demon tribal commander, for quite some time. Yes, in the past we have seen demon tribal commanders, but those are, well, like demons, imps, and devils, or, angels, dragons, and demons. They are kind of like a shared commander for those tribes, and this one is dedicated to just demons. And it does some pretty exciting things at that. There is a big upside, big downside with when it enters the battlefield, you can draw a lot of cards and lose a lot of life. Now, I will say that obviously 1 life for 1 card is a deal I will make any day of the week, so you can draw a ton of cards with this. And of course, with those ETBs, you can take even more advantage of your other demons coming into play, essentially being like a Warstorm Surge effect, pinging down whatever you need to ping down when they come into play. And of course, demons can have a lot of power, so they can hit for a ton. So yeah, I'm very excited to see demons get a dedicated tribal commander, especially one that is 3 colors like this one. And because of that 3rd color that's normally not associated with demons, you get access to fantastic cards like Ghostly Flicker and Reflections of Lit Jara. Ghostly Flicker is going to exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control to return those cards to the battlefield under your control. So basically, blink 2 things, and yeah, if you're blinking your commander, great, draw some more cards. If you are blinking another one of your demons, or again 2 of your demons, great, ping some things down. And of course, with these demons, you can take even more advantage of their ETBs, and well, your commander's ETBs with Reflections of Lit Jara. It says, when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. So, demons, whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. And of course, a copy of a permanent becomes a token. So, even with just our commander, again, let's say that we cast our commander, sure, we get a token copy of it. Now that token copy might go away because of the legend rule, but we still get its ETB trigger, and we can draw even more cards with that. And then, of course, with every single other demon we've got, well, we get a second copy of them, which is massive. And again, our commander's Warstorm Surge-like trigger is basically going to trigger twice on that, and we can dish out a ton of damage because of that. Speaking of which, Molten Echoes is somewhat similar, but can help us out in even more way in certain circumstances. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, again, demons. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. The token gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. So we might not get to keep that token around, but we can take even more advantage of blink spells, again, like Ghostly Flicker, which Reflections can't, because Reflections, again, requires the cast. So again, an upside and a downside, and again, with Molten Echoes, we can actually swing out with that token right away too, which again can be huge. Now we can also double up basically on our commander's trigger in another way, though, by actually having Warstorm Surge in play too. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, deals damage equal to its power to any target. So yeah, basically it's a second, trigger that our commander has. So we can dish out a lot of damage with all of this. And of course we can dish out even more pain with Overseer the Damned, and demons that have some fantastic ETBs as it is. When it enters the battlefield, it may destroy target creature. Whenever a non-token creature foe controls dies, create a tap 2/2 black zombie. creature token. So this can take advantage of a lot of the other effects again in this deck that are just going to be good with the way that our commander is built. Speaking of which, I mean, how about Gyruda, Doom of the Depths, which has a fantastic ETB. Now this one might be a legendary creature, so, we really can't take as much advantage of, reflections or molten echoes, but we still can get extra benefits from that ETB. It has, when it enters the battlefield, each player mills 4, and then put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from one of those cards on the battlefield under your control. So this is a great ETB to use and abuse, and yeah, I mean, that is a great effect to just potentially get another demon off the top of our library into play for free and get another trigger off of our commander. So yeah, it's about time demons actually had a dedicated tribal commander for them, and one that gives them access to a lot of colors and a lot of fantastic effects and a lot of cards. Definitely makes for some exciting build options. And speaking of exciting builds, it's time for us to move on to number 4 with Commissar Sabrina Reign. A 2/2 human soldier that costs 1 white black, and it has, leading from the front, whenever it attacks, each opponent loses X life for X the number of other attacking creatures. On top of that, it has Summary Execution, pay 2, sacrifice another creature, you gain 2 life, and draw a card. So first up, this can be a good sacrifice outlet. Again, it does cost a decent amount of mana, but you do get some value out of it. Again, gaining 2 life and drawing a card can be huge. And of course, in these colors, there are plenty of great aristocrat-style triggers that you can take advantage of. But more importantly, and what really excites me about this commander, is that attack trigger. This is the type of commander that can really make use out of a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, and yeah, you can drain your opponents for a ton with this, because again, no matter who you're attacking, every single opponent is getting drained, and once you make your army quite massive, this can be huge. And of course, in these colors, yeah, you've got plenty of fantastic options for some low-to-the-ground creatures, and plenty of fantastic options to just make a massive army. I mean, generating a bunch of tokens, even if they're not evasive, can still be very effective. Regardless, yeah, when it comes to low-to-the-ground creatures, you have a lot to pick from. Healer's Hawk is a great evasive low-to-the-ground creature, a 1/1 flying and lifelink for a white. Flying is a fantastic form of evasion. I mean, you're not guaranteed to get through, but chances are, at least on one opponent, you will. And one creature that is guaranteed to get through, though, is Tormented Soul, a 1/1 that can't block and can't be blocked. So again, you get this down early, and it can deal a lot of pain throughout the game. Also, make sure you consider other kinds of low-to-the-ground creatures that maybe have a different kind of evasion. Like, Soltari Foot Soldier has Shadow, which is kind of an old keyword, but it works out very well with a deck like this. Because this creature can block or be blocked only by creatures with Shadow, so it might not be able to block for you, but it's basically going to be unblockable for everyone else because, yeah, no one is running creatures with Shadow. So this kind of a deck can be very aggressive, be very quick, and yeah, can really take advantage of all these low-to-the-ground creatures. Now with that though, make sure that you are also considering ways to obviously make your commander unblockable, or give it some kind of evasion as well, because you do need to attack with your commander to actually get that trigger. That being said, on top of your commander, helping you drain your opponents, you can also have your creatures hit even harder with something like a Signal Pest. It's a 0/1 with Battle Cry, so whenever it attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 till end of turn, and it can't be blocked except by creatures flying or reach. So again, a low-to-the-ground creature that might not hit, well, this one doesn't hit for anything, but still, when it attacks, just by it attacking with your commander, it's going to be draining basically 3 life in total, 1 for each opponent, while also pumping the rest of your army to essentially have them hit for twice as much damage, again, for all those that, have a power of 1. And of course, there are plenty of other ways to boost the power of our creatures. I mean, Dictative Heliod is a great one. Flash creatures you control get +2/+2. So this can be a great surprise way to pump our army. And again, when it comes to a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, this can essentially triple up the amount of damage that they're dishing out, which of course can be surprising. And again, with an aggressive deck like this, we can take our opponents quite quickly. And we can basically, speed up things double time with something like Warlock class. Once it gets to level 3, at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So this obviously counts any damage they took in combat, and of course our commander's trigger as well. So yeah, I think that this commander can lead to a very exciting low-to-the-ground aggressive build, which we typically really don't see in these colors. So yeah, I'm excited to see what players do with this one. But I am especially excited for number 3 with Lucius the Eternal. It is a 5/3 Astartes warrior with haste that costs 3 black-red. It has Armor of Shrieking Souls. When it dies, exile it and choose our creature an opponent controls. When that creature leaves the battlefield, return it from exile to the battlefield under its owner's control. This is the kind of commander the likes of which we really have not seen up until now. This commander is going to be incredibly hard to ever really take out. Because as long as your opponents have creatures on the board, well, you can just pick out one of those creatures, find plenty of ways to take out that creature, and then get this back into play essentially for 3. So of course, there are some really disgusting things that you can take advantage of with a commander like this. And of course, in these colors, there are plenty of great ways to actually sacrifice this commander for value when you want to, because, yeah, you're going to be able to get them back, essentially. So yeah, Village Rites, a great one. Sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards, instant speed for just a single mana. Or how about a fantastic free sacrifice outlet like Phyrexian Plaguelord, a 4/4 with tap, sacrifice it. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn, but more importantly, sacrifice a creature, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So you can freely sacrifice your commander, or, other creatures as well for value when you need to, on top of, also taking down your opponent's creatures, either making them smaller, or again, if they just have 1 toughness, taking them out completely. Which, of course, in combination with your commander, can be a great way to take out a lot of tiny creatures. Speaking of which, how about Erebos Blackhearted? Whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. So, of course, you can take advantage of your commander dying again and again and again by drawing a ton of cards with this. And if you need to utilize this as a sacrifice outlet, you can as well. Pay 1 to black, sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end of turn. So like Phyrexian Plaguelord, this can actually be a way to actually take out creatures so you can get your commander back. And of course, you can basically ensure that your commander always has some great targets with something like Genesis Chamber. Genesis Chamber says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it's untapped, the creature's controller creates a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. So this can essentially force your opponents to have a lot of tiny creatures, and again, you can take out those creatures very quickly with something like a Phyrexian Plaguelord and your commander. Which of course you can take advantage of even more, they Blood Artist kind of effect with all these creatures dying, including yours and your opponents. You can drain opponents out in no time. And with your commander, leaving play and coming back into play a lot, you can really take advantage of a card like Wear Ancient Tread or a Warstorm Surge type effect. This one says whenever a creature with power 5 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Wear the Ancient Tread, deal 5 damage to a creature or player. So basically, yeah, your commander's got 5 power, ping things for 5 a lot. So you can have your commander take out a bunch of creatures, or you can just ping some face. And of course, while you can have your commander ping when it comes into play, you can also have ping when it leaves play with Outpost Siege. If you choose dragons, whenever a creature control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. So again, another great way to add up a lot of damage throughout the game, and another way to, again, potentially combo with something like, this and Phyrexian Plaguelord to actually take out even more creatures even quicker. So yeah, a very interesting and unique commander to say the least. But now it's time for us to move on to number 2 with Karn the Betrayer, a 5/1 Astartes Berserker that costs 3 and a red. It has Berserker, it attacks or blocks each combat of Fable, Sigil of Corruption. When you lose control of Karn the Betrayer, draw 2 cards, and it has the Betrayer. If damage will be dealt to Karn the Betrayer, prevent that damage and an opponent of your choice gains control of it. This is an incredibly spicy and incredibly unique commander. It's basically like, hey, let's make Humble Defector into a commander. So throughout the game, Karn is going to go here, there, and everywhere, just getting passed around the table. And of course, if you are good at politicking, you can really take advantage of that and draw a ton of cards with this. This is also another commander that can be quite hard to actually take out because, again, if it's dealt damage in any way, whether that's in combat or maybe with, a damage-based board wipe, you can keep it around. Well, not exactly keep it around, but it's going to move sides and, yeah, provide value to whoever it left. So definitely a commander that I never expected to see, but I am very happy to see. It's a very unique commander I think has a lot of potential. So, of course, this commander can be great with Tims, those creatures that essentially can ping things for 1. Cunning Spark Mage, Zay 0 with haste, tap, deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So this hasty Tim can essentially just ping your commander when you need to move it. Again, although your commander has 1 toughness, that damage is prevented and it is immediately moved. So again, if you control it, cool, let's draw 2 cards by doing that. Or again, if we can politic with an opponent, be like, hey, I'll have you draw 2 cards right now by moving your commander, as long as you give it to me. And if you are able to make deals with an opponent, Endbringer can provide you both a ton of value. It's basically a Tim that you can utilize on every single turn. It untaps during each other player's untap step, and it can tap to ping to a creature player for 1. So essentially with each trip around the table, that is what, 8 total cards drawn, and again, if you split that with one other player, that's 4 each. So yeah, that can be a ton of value throughout the game. Speaking of which, Assault Suit can even add to this craziness. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has haste and can attack you or planeswalker you control and can't be sacrificed. On top of that, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of equipped creature until end of turn. If you do, untap it. So you can make some deals, have this move around quite a bit, and yeah, give a lot of value to a lot of players while also ensuring that you're not going to be attacked. Or, of course, with attacking, you could take advantage of that with things like Caltrops, Explorer Scope, and Moon Silver Spear. Caltrop says whenever a creature attacks, Caltrops deals 1 damage to it, so your commander essentially can never hit you because whenever it attacks, it's just going to get pinged for 1, and it's going to move side. Or how about Explorer Scope, which of course you can equip while you control your commander, and it has whenever equipped creature attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it on the battlefield tapped. So again, although it is the other player maybe attacking with your commander with this attached to it, you control Explorer Scope, so you get that trigger and you can ramp a lot with this card. Or you can make a massive angel army from your commander attacking, no matter who is attacking. Moon Silver Spear is a great card. Equipped creature has first strike. Whenever it attacks, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. So yeah, throughout the game, this can make you a lot of angels and you can get a ton of value out of this. This is the type of commander that can really benefit from some unique cards and can do some very exciting and off-the-wall things. So yeah, I'm really excited to see Karn the Betrayer and how players build around it. But now the moment that you've all been waiting for with the Golden Pig Awards, it's time to get to number 1. That's right, the Golden Pig itself. And coming in at number 1, the Golden Pig of the Warhammer 40K precons is Garrison Starn Keller Morph. A 3/2 Tyranid human with Ward 2 that costs 1 blue and a red, and it has 3 auto stubs. Whenever another source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, Garrison Starn Keller Morph deals 2 damage to that permanent or player. This commander is incredibly unique and has a lot of potential to do a lot of very exciting things. Again, this is basically like, 1 damage tribal kind of in a way, or at least it can be built in that direction. And when you are dishing out 1 damage in a lot of different ways, you can really take advantage of that trigger and your commander can dish out even more damage. I mean, basically, it triples up the damage essentially. And of course, with your commander actually dishing out that damage, there are some ways that you can really take advantage of that and have some very exciting plays. And of course, with that as well, there are some very brutal things that you can do with it too, and some very brutally spicy things too. I mean, first up, just consider what this can do with a card like Mana Barbs. Mana Barbs is an enchantment that says whenever a player taps a land for mana, Mana Barbs deals 1 damage to that player. Now, this is already a brutal card, but again, our commander essentially triples up this damage. So whenever a player taps a land for mana, they are basically lightning bolted. This can make things go incredibly quickly. And of course, when we're dishing out all this damage, and we'll get to these ways here in a bit, there are plenty of ways to really take advantage of this and to make it even more lopsided so that our opponents are taking the brunt of the force. Now, of course, there are also less dependent damage dealers, like a Roiling Vortex at the beginning of each player's upkeep. Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. So this one is just always going to happen. They're always going to take, again, in combination with our commander, 3 damage, and this can add up a lot throughout the game. It also can punish players for basically casting spells for free by dealing 5 damage to them, and on top of that, we can pay a red, and your opponents can't gain life this turn. So we can ensure that they stay down in their life totals, keep going further and further down, whereas we've got some ways to ensure that we can actually build ours up. But yeah, of course, other triggers like Hissing Iguanar can be great as well. Whenever the creature dies, you may have Hissing Iguanar deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, kind of like a Blood Artist type effect. But again, with this commander, with that being 1 damage, it's basically now 3. So yeah, creature dies, lightning bolt, whatever you want to lightning bolt. Or, we can just basically lightning bolt everything with Goblin Chain Whirler. When it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. So this can basically be a one-sided small board wipe in a way, taking out a lot of, medium-sized and small creatures and, picking our opponent's faces as well. Or, it can just be a straight-up one-sided board wipe if we've got something like Gorgon's Head attached to our commander. It says equipped creature has Death Touch, so again, no matter what amount of damage our commander is doing to something, it is going to get taken out. So again, something like Goblin Chain Whirler, with that trigger, all of our opponents are dealt 2 damage from our commander, and again, our commander has Death Touch, so they are all gone. Yeah, we can do some very spicy and game-changing things with this commander. And of course, another keyword that our commander can really take advantage of is with something like Locks in Warhammer, which is going to give lifelink to it. So again, keep in mind, it is our commander dishing out that additional 2 damage no matter what it is, So let's just talk about again something like mana barbs. Whenever we tap a land for mana, we are dealing 1 damage to ourselves with the mana barbs and 2 with our commander for every single one of our lands. But again, if our commander has lifelink, we essentially negate that damage our commander dealt to us. We gain 2 and lose 2 from our commander. Whereas our opponents aren't going to be so lucky. They still take the 3 damage, again 1 from mana barbs and 2 from our commander, and we gain 2 life every single time because of that lifelink. So it's kind of like a 5-point swing with them just tapping 1 land. Just 1 land, they take 3, we gain 2. So again, there are of course ways to pad our life total a ton, so with this group slug type of strategy, we can take everyone down effectively and efficiently while also building ourselves up. So yeah, overall, I just think that Starn has a very exciting new kind of a design, a very unique commander that can do some very spicy things. And because of that, again, congratulations, Starn, you are the golden pig of the Warhammer 40K precons, and make sure again you're on the lookout for that golden pig trophy in the mail. And of course, I know that you will display it proudly and cherish it forever. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, these golden pig awards are based on my favorite commanders, but I'm also going to have an episode on the most powerful commanders. That's right, I'm going to go through the tier list rankings for Warhammer 40K. So make sure to look out for that episode. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.